Chapter 3, Hackers Test 1 to 5.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor.
Professor Keynes, are you busy right now?
Oh, hi there, Jess. Not at all. Come right on in.
Thanks. Sorry for barging in on you like this.
It's not a problem. So, what's up?
Oh, well, I came to talk about a presentation I'm preparing for the film festival that starts in 2 weeks. The nominating committee selected me as the key student speaker.
Well now, that's quite an honor. Congratulations. So, what are you doing your presentation on?
Isn't that the question of the day?
All right. Well, what are you considering? You must have given it some thought.
You might think this is far-fetched, but what I'd really like to give it on is the relationship between film and literature. Actually, I'm really interested in this topic, and I heard that you gave a seminar on this topic before, as part of your comparative literature course. So I thought that, perhaps you could point me in the direction of some good references.
Uh-huh. Okay, first off, the topic is a bit too broad. Have you thought about what you want to focus on? Like, is there a specific time period? And what type of literature or movie genre are you particularly interested in?
Actually, I'm not really particular about the time period. I just wanted to compare the similarities between film and literature, at least where storytelling is concerned.
I see. And what purpose would such a comparison serve? I mean, why are you making a comparison in the first place?
Well, I have an idea. If we compare film and literature in terms of storytelling, and if both of them make use of the same techniques, then the definition of each art form is, well, open to debate. It brings up questions like, what is film, and how influential is film?
Now you're onto something, but it still sounds pretty complex to me. Anyhow, what you might want to do is fine-tune your theory a bit, and then come up with 1 or 2 comparisons. I would even suggest limiting the topic further. For example, a single story from literature and a single film.
That's a start anyway, but, could you recommend any readings or films to look at that might back up my theory? It'll save me a lot of time in the library.
Sure, I don't see why not. I'd start with Eisenstein's article, Evolution of Cinematography. It gives a pretty thorough overview of the film industry's effect on literature during the late 20th century. I'd also take some time to look over J. Robertson's article on literary definitions and terminologies. He's quite a master when it comes to describing the precise function of terms.
Great. You've given me some excellent starting points. I think I'll be able to manage by myself from here. But just in case I have any more questions, could I?
Certainly. Don't ever be afraid to stop by for a chat. I know how easy it is to get stuck or to run out of ideas.
Thanks, Professor Keynes. I appreciate it.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. 1. What is the conversation mainly about? 'Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question. Well now, that's quite an honor. Congratulations. So, what are you doing your presentation on?
Isn't that the question of the day?
2. Why does the student say this?
Isn't that the question of the day?
3. What does the professor suggest the student do? 4. What paper does the student want to present at the film festival?
Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question. I see. And what purpose would such a comparison serve? I mean, why are you making a comparison in the first place?
Well, I have an idea. If we compare film and literature in terms of storytelling, and if both of them make use of the same techniques, then the definition of each art form is, well, open to debate. It brings up questions like, what is film and how influential is film?
Now you're onto something. 5. What does the professor mean when he says this? Now you're onto something.
6 to 11. Listen to part of a lecture in an economics class.
There is a good chance that a company will experience a problem that reduces profits or even threatens its existence. So it's important for management to know how to respond to these situations, how to deal with a crisis, in other words. And the most important part of this process takes place long before the crisis happens. I'm talking about contingency planning. So, what exactly is contingency planning? Well, it is when a company decides how to respond to a specific problem in advance. That way, it won't waste a lot of time scrambling around when disaster strikes. And with a contingency plan, the company is more likely to do the right thing. It's hard to figure out the best course of action when you are, in the middle of a crisis. And, of course, a good contingency plan can minimize financial losses. Now, contingency planning can be divided into 3 specific stages. The first of these is risk assessment. What do you think I mean by this? Jake?
Risk assessment? I'm not sure. Maybe it has to do with the potential problems different types of companies experience. I mean, a chemical manufacturer would be more concerned about an environmental disaster than, say, a publishing company.
You've got it, and that's a great example. A company should determine which risks it faces. It also has to figure out which of these will have serious consequences. There's no point in making elaborate preparations for minor problems, right? The next thing is to create a detailed plan to deal with the crisis. What resources are required? What specific actions must be taken? Things like that. Another task that must be accomplished during this planning stage is setting up the crisis response team. Management must assign employees and make sure they know their roles. I can't stress enough how important it is to do this before a problem occurs. A crisis can't be managed if nobody involved knows what to do or who to report to. So the threat has been identified and the plan is made. Job done, right? Well, not quite. The final step is something called maintenance. What this means is that a contingency plan must be periodically reviewed and revised. This is usually done on an annual basis. Now, why do you think this is necessary?
Well, you mentioned that employees are assigned to the crisis response team when the plan is created, but people quit their jobs, right? So I guess this has to be taken into account.
Good. The plan has to be updated due to personnel changes, but that's not the entire story. Other circumstances can change as well. New technologies, new laws, almost anything can affect the viability of a plan. So it must be kept up to date. Yes?
I was just wondering, how effective are contingency plans in real-world situations? They sound good in theory, but do they really work?
They are incredibly effective. A recent case with a mining company is a good example. When a shaft at one of its mines collapsed, several workers were trapped underground. Fortunately, this was a risk the company had anticipated, so it had a contingency plan in place. There was a response team ready to go, and it had all of the equipment needed to perform a rescue. The result? The miners were brought to the surface in less than 24 hours. It didn't even take a full day. These situations often drag on for several days while preparations are being made.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer.
6. What is the lecture mainly about? Seven. According to the professor, what are the benefits of contingency planning? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
Now, contingency planning can be divided into 3 specific stages. The first of these is risk assessment. What do you think I mean by this? Jake?
Risk assessment? I'm not sure. Maybe it has to do with the potential problems different types of companies experience?
8. What does the student mean when he says this?
Risk assessment?
Nine. What is the professor's attitude toward a crisis response team? Ten. What is the final stage of the contingency planning process? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
The result? The miners were brought to the surface in less than 24 hours. It didn't even take a full day. These situations often drag on for several days while preparations are being made.
11. Why does the professor say this?
It didn't even take a full day.
(12 to 17).
Listen to part of a lecture on astronomy.
As you know, Saturn is one of the most recognizable objects in the solar system. Its elegant rings are unlike anything else we've seen. What a lot of people probably don't realize, though, is that Saturn holds the distinction of having more moons than any other planet. So, what are these moons like? Well, that's a tricky question because they are so diverse. But one classification, albeit a rough one, is between regular satellite and irregular satellite. Moons in the first group are characterized by prograde orbits, orbits that are counterclockwise when you view it from the north pole of the planet. Also, the angle or inclination of these orbits against Saturn's equatorial plane is not very high. Irregular satellites, on the other hand, have orbits that are farther from Saturn. Their inclinations are higher, and some have retrograde orbits, orbits that go in a direction opposite to the rotation of the planet. Today, we'll focus on regular satellites, particularly Titan and Dione, and discuss their unique characteristics. So, what's so special about Titan? To start with, it's over 5,000 kilometers in diameter and accounts for 96% of the estimated mass of all of Saturn's moons combined. Just to compare, it's even larger than the planet Mercury. Other attributes that set it apart are its similarities to Earth. For example, Earth and Titan have the only nitrogen-rich atmospheres in the entire solar system. This finding has fueled speculation that Titan might have the building blocks to sustain life. Personally, I don't think it's too far-fetched, do you? Anyway, a thick layer of gases allows dense clouds to form, which protect the atmosphere from much of the sun's radiation. Yet, any solar energy that gets through the protective layer produces a faint greenhouse effect. The similarities with Earth do not stop there. The presence of wind, as well as rain and surface liquid, probably in the form of liquid methane and ethane, continually erode the surface of Titan, so that rivers, valleys, and dunes have formed. Now let's talk about Dione. Dione is the second largest of Saturn's moons. Its terrain is heavily cratered, and it has an extensive network of depressions and fractures, suggesting that there may have been some tectonic activity on Dione in the past. But what's interesting is the presence of what is called wispy terrain, streaks that are transparent and don't conceal the physical features beneath. That's why they were called wispy. On December 13, 2004, the Cassini spacecraft flew by Dione and discovered that the wisps were actually bright cliffs of ice that may have been brought on by the moon's tectonic features. Some of these cliffs were several hundred meters high. Another characteristic of Dione is that the fractures and wispy terrain are mostly located on the moon's trailing hemisphere, the hemisphere that faces away from the direction of Dione's motion. Usually, these features are found on the leading hemisphere, so some scientists believe Dione was spun around when a huge meteor or debris crashed onto its surface. However, no one is positive about why this unusual phenomenon exists. No doubt, we'll learn a lot more about Saturn's moons as NASA's Cassini spacecraft probes further and further.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. 12. What is the professor mainly discussing? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
For example, Earth and Titan have the only nitrogen-rich atmospheres in the entire solar system. This finding has fueled speculation that Titan might have the building blocks to sustain life. Personally, I don't think it's too far-fetched, do you?
13. Why does the professor say this?
Personally, I don't think it's too far-fetched, do you?
(14) According to the professor, what are 3 ways in which Titan is similar to the Earth? 15. What does the professor say about Dionys' terrain? Sixteen. What do some scientists imply about Dionys' trailing hemisphere? Seventeen. What is the professor's opinion about research on Saturn's moons?